Welcome back to the Ohio MMA Podcast. I am your host, David McKinney. Joining me on today's episode is one of the hottest fighters in the state of Ohio, Mr. Cody Wilson. Thanks for joining me, Cody.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So you are one of the hottest fighters in the state. You actually 3 wins on the year already. We're barely just now halfway through the year, and 2 wins within one calendar month. You got a submission at Cage Thunder 27, and then a big TKO this past weekend at Ohio Combat League 30. So, um, talk me through it, man. Is this was this the game plan? Staying super busy in 2024?
Yeah, so my first loss being in 2015, I think I took that fight just fresh out of high school. Just always been a fight fan, but never really trained fully for it. But then when I had my first fight against Tevin, I saw that it carried on. So my record was 0-1. So I saw that, I was like, all right, I got to fix that a little bit. So I knew I was going to have a big year. Definitely don't plan on any more losses. So I think that one loss in my record is going to be the only one until the pro record starts.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. So you as you mentioned, you made your debut all the way back in 2015, and then a 9-year layoff. That is very rare to have that long of a layoff.
Yeah.
What was it like, going in there after that long, after being that long out of the cage?
So I've always been training the grappling. So I've done a couple of cage grappling, and I think that's what really wanted me to jumpstart getting back in and actually fighting because I'm training over at Strong Style. We got killers over there, and I'm just doing so well with these guys and really becoming a problem in the room. So figured it was kind of time to show my skills and show I can actually be a real threat in this sport. And I think
And
it's starting to show.
Yeah, and how did you kind of find the grappling and the jujitsu? Was it something that you just had a little bit of a break and wanted to get back into it, or have you been doing grappling for? I know you were a wrestling background, but how did you kind of fall in love with the jujitsu aspect?
So yeah, there is a lot of differences between the wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I found that out pretty quick, but as long as you have that wrestling base, it definitely helps you out with the jiu-jitsu. You learn a lot of different things you have to kind of overcome, but I think I've always been just in love with the wrestling grappling and just it's like more technical to me, I guess. That's why I always do it in my fights. It's like what I try to strive to do. But
And so I know you're training jujitsu at Strong Style, but you still consider yourself an independent fighter.
yeah.
Is that something that you're eventually just you want to stay independent, or so you can be able to train at different gyms, or do you feel like you eventually might try to join the Strong Style fight team, the legendary Strong Style fight team?
Yeah, there's been talk about it. I'm real close with Marcus and Alex, and we've been discussing it. It's just I think with my work schedule, I own my own company, so sometimes it's kind of hard to actually attend all the fighter practices and everything. I think that was the biggest thing I told them that it's kind of stopping me from doing that. But also being able to kind of take my own fights and kind of train with different gyms because I do that a lot. Sometimes I'll travel for work. Got to go to Gracie and Tampa. Got a lot of good working with guys like that, and everywhere I go, every gym's pretty much welcoming with open arms. Always real cool. Get a nice, good look with other guys, other fighters from pretty much all over the country. So it works out
Yeah,
pretty good, I think.
do you feel like that's like a little bit of an advantage too, to where you're not always necessarily training with the exact same guys and you're getting different looks at this point in your career?
I think so. I think it definitely is a pretty good advantage. And then not really having to answer to many people and just kind of be able to do your own thing. But I think eventually here soon, I am going to end up finding an actual home because I'm 3-0 now. I mean, I'm sure that's not too like you don't really see that as an independent much, but I've definitely worked with a lot of good gyms. A lot of gyms have been kind of in my messages talking to me, and just got to find the right spot. But I've always loved Strong Style, good guys. Been there the last couple of years, and everyone's like family to me already. So that'd probably be the best fit.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing too, you have the wrestling background, but also jujitsu as well. It's just, do you get a little bit of flack from your wrestling buddies? You have 2 wins off your back via triangle, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just glad the third fight didn't go that way. I was telling all my friends, like, yeah, I want to switch it up and show I don't have to just submit these guys. I can actually do a little bit of damage too. So I'm glad it actually each fight has actually went exactly the way I kind of planned it out in my head prior to going into it, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I did commentary for your fight, and I always like to send guys, a questionnaire before, and you actually said I went back and looked, and you said I predict a second round submission realistically or second round TKO. So I was going to ask if you visualized that, and it sounds like you did. That's how you expected it to go.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I actually forgot I said that to you. So yeah, that is funny.
um, what was the fight? I know, kind of leading up to it, you actually said like you didn't know if the fight was going to happen. There were some things with your opponent Tyler Silverthorne.
Yeah.
You know, obviously that's his business, but what's it like kind of not knowing, the fight's on, then off, and then on again? How do you stay prepared when because a lot of guys, I feel like you have an opponent and then the opponent drops out, you get a different opponent. You had kind of the opposite where it was like you got the same opponent back. How do you stay like focused on focused on being able to face that opponent when it's there was this guy, then it's not him, then it's him again,
Yeah.
and um that's got to be tough, right?
Yeah. Well, I've told, so I've done a lot of Cage Thunder. OCL was real cool to be a part of too, but I've told these guys, I really don't care who it is that's in front of me. I'll always take the fight. I'll never say no to anybody as long as it's 145. I'm there always. So I just knew no matter what, if even if it wasn't him, if another opponent steps up last minute, I'll still be willing, just as willing. So I was definitely ready for whatever outcome. I'm just glad he was able to shake off whatever it was and actually step in there with me.
Yeah, and so I know you also said before the fight that if you got a win that you were told you'd be in line for the Cage Thunder featherweight championship. Is that still something that's on the line, and are you going to try to make that happen at their big show in August, or is it going to be further down the line?
Yeah, so I actually just talked to Scott today. I let him know how I was doing the podcast with you, and he said he still is really trying to. I guess there's something going on with the Canadian that I'd be fighting. They're trying to make sure the state is all good with him being in run for the title, but that's what he was telling me. He wants to make it for August, and right now that's the plan. It's just not fully set in stone, but that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, and that's a
Huge
massive
card.
event. So I don't know
Yeah,
how far back you go, but Fight Night in the Flats was always for NAFs back in the day the biggest show. And I know you're a Cleveland guy. Is that and you fought I think most of your fights in your first two in Akron and then one down in Columbus. How is it going to feel getting your very first fight was in Pennsylvania actually,
yeah.
but how's it going to feel to be able to get a hometown fight for the first time?
Oh, it'll be so great. I have a lot of friends and family, big support group. That's definitely everyone's looking forward to it. So when I say it's right here in Cleveland, it's going to be really crazy. So I'm ready for it to be set in stone. So then the tickets will start flying in.
Yeah, that's a like I said, it's such an awesome venue for people that haven't been to a fight night in the flats. It definitely is worth going to, and it looks like Cage Thunder, the fight card they've already started putting together, is pretty big, and so that's another thing too that the fights, and you've actually I think all the events you've been on have been on pro-ams, but do you
Yeah.
kind of feel like the level of there's like going to be probably 5 6 7 pro fights on this card, and it looks like they're being really selective with the amateur fights that are on the event. Do you kind of does that like maybe help you like step your game up a little bit, that it's like just a whole other level of like the guys that surround you on the card, and girls that they're all mostly going to be pros or experienced amateurs versus you might be on another card where half the card is debut or want to know.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes you think a little different. I mean, because I did the it was a next gen event where it was all amateurs, but then when it was the pro am on the Cage Thunder 27, I think it really does. You see all these guys train and really locked in, and I think it kind of helps you out too, because then it really makes you want to be better. But it's
Yeah,
always the people you have around you definitely help you. And it like I've
yeah,
met so many good guys, so many good fighters on those events, and I think it definitely does good.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when they used to do those big events, like members of the Browns would show up, and Bjorn Rebney from Bellator was there at one of the events. So you never know who's in the audience. And that actually, he was, he was there trying to sign fighters. He actually, offered a couple fighters contracts who ended up going to the UFC eventually. But that's pretty crazy that fighters. I think Cody Garbrandt was on that card as an amateur, and I was like, I know you guys are a pro organization, but watch out for this guy. I think it was
Yeah.
like his third amateur fight. So those big cards, you never know who's going to be in the audience as well. Um, but as you mentioned, you own your own business, you own your own construction company. What's it like being a business owner, and also trying to be able to balance, uh, you know, fighting and training at the same time? I actually recently had Mark Antonelli on, who was on the same card as you, and he said he was a teacher before, and then became his own boss and started his own company, but that actually gave him more flexibility. Do you feel like that gives you kind of more flexibility or less, or like how do you balance the business owner and the fighter side?
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of dangerous when you can make your own schedule because then maybe you do a little less work. Like about 2 weeks leading up to this fight, I really wasn't doing too much work related stuff, and now I can get back to it. But I think I can. I think I managed it well, where I'm still able to get a little work done, maybe work till 6 or 7, but still find my way into the gym. No matter how tired I am, I make sure I get in there.
Yeah, and I always like to ask guys about their nickname. How'd you get the nickname the Warrior?
So I think it started back in high school when I wrestled. I was always the smallest guy in the gym, but pretty much the one that would pretty much take anybody down. So I think it started from that, and then playing football, being 80 pounds, and still going out and being on kickoff returns and really making a statement. So I think I got it back in football wrestling days back in high school, and I kind of just thought it fit because I've always been this way from when I was a kid to now. Always been a warrior, looking for any opportunity.
That's
So I
crazy. You
think
were
it fits well.
80 pounds in high school playing football.
Oh, no, yeah, it was rough. I didn't really grow until about a year or two after, but then that's what happened with the layoff. Really, I just knew I had to really focus on the gym and like the strength training and really getting bigger if I was going to really compete with these guys.
Yeah, and so is 145 kind of, I know you said that you'll accept pretty much any fight at 145. Is that where you see yourself like long term being even when you get to pro? I know in Ohio it's same day weigh-in, so guys don't want to cut too much weight. But is that where you kind of see yourself long term?
Yeah, so I'm not a bull. I'm not a bully with the weight. I'm always 155. I've never been above 160. So me at 145, that's comfortable for me to get at. I don't feel too dead or anything. I think I've had some buddies talk to me saying 135 could be possible, but I'm not sure about all that. I think 45 is where I'll stay.
Yeah, once you start cutting, then it's like, oh well, maybe 125, and then yeah, it gets to be
No,
a
it's
slippery slope.
easier said than done.
Yeah, yeah, no, I see some of these guys cutting weight, and it's like a lot of times it's the guys who don't cut as much weight are more successful. In the sport is now it's like you want to be as healthy as you possibly can be going into a fight. But I think that's a great mindset, especially and a lot of times you see the fighters with the wrestling background have kind of
Yeah,
the it's almost the opposite of like you're not cutting as much weight because you're like I've been doing this my whole life and it
yeah,
sucks. So
that's exactly. Usually wrestlers have it all down to a science, but me being 80 pounds in eighth grade, and then I was finally maybe 96 in my freshman year, I never had to cut weight in my life. I was always the lowest weight class there was. So I never really got that opportunity to realize how it was to cut weight and until I actually started doing the fighting and having to do it that way. But
yeah. You also told me you were a big family guy and animal lover. You've got a couple animals that you treat like your kids. I'm the same way. My
oh yeah,
dog. Every time I'm working at home or doing the podcast, there's that's actually my guest room, and they're usually either on the bed behind me or right next to my feet when I'm doing it. So tell me about your animals.
yeah, that's why I'm in the car because they'd probably be all over the podcast too. But so I have a little dog, Pomeranian Husky mix. Had him since he was a little baby. Then we decided he needed a brother, so we got him a little kitten, and now they're best friends.
Awesome, a dog
But
and a cat.
yeah, no kids yet, but that's always coming soon.
Yeah.
There's always time for
Um,
that.
And so I know you've been super busy so far this year. Like I said, I already have 3 wins on the year, and we're just now beginning July. What's your kind of looking forward? I know you've kind of hinted eventually going pro. What's your like timeline for that? Is that you want to be pro in a year, 2 years? Do you have any idea? Um, do, what's your game plan for the future?
So I'm thinking I don't know how many more fights I can squeeze in after August, but you know me by now. If I can squeeze it in, I will. I might not do two in the same month again, but I mean, if I space it out a month or two, I think by the end of next year, I think that can be a possibility.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty crazy turnaround. Like I said, from 9 years out of the cage to maybe 9 fights in a year and a half or something crazy like that. But it's awesome. I'm a fan. Like I said, I saw you at the Cage Thunder show back in February, and you definitely turned me on to being a fan, and you've got a lot of talent. And like I said, I'm excited to continue to watch you climb the ranks. I just noticed the Tapology rankings just updated. You're in the top 10
I saw
for
that. That
145. So
Yeah, that was nice. That made me happy a little bit to see that. A lot of good
yeah,
guys in there too, though, that I'm sure I'll be facing in the near future. So
yeah, 145 is so deep too that you're not ever you're not going to run out of opponents. And
definitely not.
guys at 145, and then always got fighters going up and down from 35 and 55. So that's, like I said, it's definitely the deepest. I think that and maybe 155 are the deepest weight classes. So is that something you look at? Do you look at the rankings and who's doing what, or like now that you're kind of climbing the ranks and people are going to start to take notice of you? Is that something that you do a little bit too?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've made a lot of friends in the sport already. Actually, guys that I might end up having the fight eventually. We all kind of keep track of each other and see how everyone's doing. We all want everyone to do well, but yeah, there's a couple guys that have been really trying to focus on see how they're doing, what their next move is, to see if they're a potential matchup for me or not.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in August. Hopefully, that fight gets announced soon. But anything else you got to mention, man?
No, I think we covered everything. I'm just happy you wanted me on.
Yeah, like I said, you win 2 fights in a month and three, and yeah, I think you earn a podcast interview. That's a pretty impressive. And not as many fighters are that active anymore. Especially amateurs. It kind of just depends. But yeah, it's always fun. And nominated for fighter of the month, and maybe if you win that, then you'll be nominated for fighter of the year. So stay tuned for that. I'm always working on that, and always keeps me busy. There's plenty to do with that. But
Oh, I'm
yeah,
sure.
man, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All
Always.
right, Cody, the Warrior Wilson is going to fight for the title in August, hopefully. So we'll be back next week with another episode.